Hey, welcome to the November edition of the How to Podcast series. What are we doing this month? We're doing an episode every single day. For the month of November, yeah, that's a lot of podcast episodes, Dave. And what I want to do is I want to shine a light on amazing podcasters who are doing great things in podcasting. I want you to meet some of my friends. Now, these are friends that I've met through this podcast. These are friends that I've met by being on their show. These are friends that have been at our meetups. These are friends who I cherish and I think are people that you need to know. The best way to grow podcasting is word-of-mouth marketing, telling people about people's shows. That's what this is all about for the month of November. It's all word of mouth. You're going to hear from them come on and talk about their podcast. You're going to hear clips from shows. You'll have links to go follow these amazing people. And I want to give you a variety of different amazing podcasters for you to fall in love with. And you found the right spot. This is November. It's all about the listeners. It's all about you. And I want to shine a light on some amazing people. Are you ready? Okay. Let's jump into this because I think you're going to love this. And I'm glad you're here. And what I can't wait for is the day when you and I get to interact. I can't wait for us to meet each other at our meetups, online, through the link in the notes attached to this episode, where you and I can meet each other and I can be there in your corner to support you. I would love to do that. So here's another example of one of my friends at their show, and I want you to fall in love with them just as much as I have. Okay? Welcome to the How to Podcast series. It's November. It's National Podcast Post Month. It's 30 episodes in 30 days, and I want you to meet some of my favorite people in this world called podcasting. It's all about them. It's not about me. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Check out one of my friends. You ready? You ready? Okay, here we go. So I listen to a show called PodNews. They have a daily episode, and they also have a weekly recap summary episode, which I listen to. It's hosted by one of the amazing voices in podcasting, James Cridland. He is one of the go-to people, and his co-host, Sethi. The two of them together do this podcast, and they cover podcast news. They cover like the big, huge podcast networks. They cover all the platforms that do podcasting like Apple and Spotify. They cover all the hosting sites. They cover all the conferences. James travels the world and brings us the news in a fun, informative way. What I love about what James and Sam do together is they're really focused on podcasters. Now, sometimes the topics are more for like the big, huge podcasters and about making money with your show and all kinds of things like that. But they do bring it back to you and I as independent podcasters. They want to see the entire podcast industry grow. So Sam flies around the world doing conferences and speaking, and he's usually in an airport or on a plane somewhere. And he's a great, James is such a great guy. I really love what the two of these guys do together on the show. This is probably the most quoted podcast in podcasting circles. This is kind of like the hub of all podcasting news. Everything you need to know about podcasting, from the big to the small and everything in between, is here on PodNews. So it's one of my go-tos. Every week I listen. I actually support the show as well because I love what these guys do. And it's really great to be a part of that. So yeah, so it's really cool. So here's a little clip from PodNews. Even a little shout out about the How to Podcast series, which is great. We were featured on there, which I was not expecting with my donation to the show, but this is the kind of stuff that James does as an example. So here's a little bit from PodNews. And if you're interested in anything to do with the news of podcasting, and you want to get deeper than just the surface level, instead of waiting for somebody else to quote James, why don't you just go see James and Sam right at first, and you'll get the information before anyone else. And you'll notice a lot of people quoting PodNews. And this is where I get my information for podcasting. So I invite you to come listen. PodNews, James Cridland, Sam Sethi. Really a fun podcast to listen to and very smart gentlemen. So learn more about podcasting through PodNews. Here's a clip and a little shout out to the How to Podcast series from James, which made me smile. Here you go.
And now, on with the show.
The last word in podcasting news. This is the PodNews Weekly Review with James Cridland and Sam Sethi.
I'm James Cridland, the editor of PodNews, the daily podcast newsletter.
And I'm Sam Sethi, the CEO of PodFans.
Every week, the PodNews Weekly Review is the last word in podcasting news, with a look back at the most important news in podcasting and interviews with the people that matter.
This is Rachel King. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PodPeople.
Hey, this is Mark Asquith, the co-founder here at Captivate.
Hey, James, it's Kathy Doyle.
Hi, this is Brendan Mulligan, founder of Podpage.
I'm Anna Sean. I lead the marketing team that is focused on Spotify for podcasters.
Hi, I'm Christiana Cromer, Descript's community manager.
Hi, I'm Tom Rossi from Buzzsprout.
Hi, this is Todd Cochran, CEO and co-founder of Blueberry.
I'm Melissa Kishie, and I'm a senior vice president at Edison Research.
Hear from Sam, me, and everyone else in this industry every week. The PodNews Weekly Review with Buzzsprout. Podcast hosting made easy.
From your daily newsletter, the PodNews Weekly Review.
And in podcast news, the How To podcast series calls itself a judgment-free how to podcast for podcasters and features bite-sized, easy, consumable tips, updates and suggestions to help you on your podcast journey. It's hosted by Dave Campbell, who joined PodNews as a personal supporter this week.
So PodNews. Again, they have daily episodes. They're short, like really, really short. And he has a great newsletter as well, which you can get all this information in your newsletter. You can email it right to you. And if you want to know more about podcasting beyond what the gurus say on a podcast about podcasting, or it's quoted by people who use PodNews as their source of information, it's really great to go to the source. On the PodNews website, you can actually search for your podcast, and it'll give you a lot of great information about your show, from the behind the scenes about your podcast and all that. So you can actually find your show on PodNews on their website. And they're like, again, the hub of all things podcasting. If you want to go deeper beyond the surface level and get to know podcasting in a new way, go check out PodNews. Check out their daily episodes if you're interested, and then listen to the weekly recap. Highly recommend. James Cridland and Sam Sethi, PodNews. Again, part of our feature of National Podcast Post Month, 30 episodes, 30 days, and focusing on other podcasts that you should be aware of. So if you're all in on podcasting, go check out PodNews. So I love being a podcaster. I love meeting these great people. And I love the fact that you press play on this episode and that you're still here. That tells me that there's something here for you. And if you're like, Dave, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this community, and I want to spend some time with you. There's a link in the show notes. It's just for you. You and I can get together and chat about your podcast, answer any questions you have. And the most important thing is we get to meet each other. So if you feel like you've been podcasting alone, you should never podcast alone. You should podcast in a group. We have a community just for you. And I, Dave, would love to be part of your community. HowToPodcast.ca is where you can find me, find our amazing community, and meet the people you've met here today on this episode. So, what are you waiting for? Stop podcasting by yourself. Reach out. I would love to talk to you. Happy National Podcast Post Month. And we'll talk soon. Thank you for being part of the community, and thank you for listening to this episode. HowToPodcast.ca. Take care.